morning. Today we are at Point State Park in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This is where the Allegheny River and the Monongahela River come together to form the Ohio River. The Ohio River flows west for a while, then turns south and eventually dumps into the Mississippi River down in southwest Illinois. This is also the site of the historic Fort Duquesne and Fort Pitt. These were two forts established by the French and the British, respectively, back during the French and Indian War. The French and Indian War was just the American theater of a much larger 7 Years' War between England and France. From aerial views, you can see where the forts originally existed. Somewhere around here is the old Fort Pitt Blockhouse Tunnel, which claims to be one of the oldest structures west of the Allegheny River. But that's not why we're here. No, today I'm going to begin my biggest adventure yet, a long bicycle trip, and you are coming along. I will be riding here, starting here in Pittsburgh, over the course of the next 4 days and 3 nights, and pedaling all the way to Cumberland, Maryland, on the Great Allegheny Passage Rail Trail. First 17 miles or so will be pretty urban, and then I'll actually jump on the trail itself over around McKeesport. We'll be crossing old bridges, going through old tunnels, and seeing some spectacular scenery along the way. And since I like to incorporate history into all of my videos, I'll be stopping along the way and talking about some of the historical sites we encounter. So, welcome aboard. Hope you enjoy the ride.
Let's rock.
We're on the north side of the Monongahela River. We're going to be riding on trails like this for about the next 17 miles until we get to McKeesport. Hopefully, I won't go too far to the right and end up in the drink. On your right. Out of the way, birds. Almost again. Hope you can hear me over all the noise. We're driving right by a busy highway. Ouch. Whoa, almost missed that turn. Okay, this is the first landmark stop on our journey. This is called the Hot Metal Bridge. This is the Hot Metal Bridge going across the Monongahela River. The Hot Metal Bridge was built in the year 1900 by the Jones and Laughlin Steel Company, back in the heyday of the steel industry, to transport molten pig iron from the blast furnaces on the north side of the river, behind us, to the Bessemer converters on the south side of the river. Iron ore was mined in the western Great Lakes, Minnesota area, and was transported to Pennsylvania port of Erie by ore freighter up in the northeast corner of the state. Then the ore was transported by railroad to Pittsburgh. Now there, the raw ore would be dumped into one of these huge processing plants called blast furnaces. The blast furnaces would melt the iron in the ore to separate it from the rest of the material, which was called slag. The iron, then, still in molten form, would be carried in these big crucibles on the backs of railroad cars and transported to the Bessemer converters on the south side of the river. There it would be further processed to remove any remaining impurities and purified and made into steel. On the original bridge, the rails of the railroad, were mounted on a long concrete pad instead of the conventional wooden railroad ties. If wooden railroad ties had been used and any molten iron got spilled out of the cars, it might set those ties on fire, melt the bridge's superstructure, which would cause the bridge to collapse, and that would be a bad thing.
Left.
A conventional railroad bridge just to the left of us was converted for vehicular use in 2000, and then this bridge was converted for pedestrian and bicycle uses in 2007. The thing about tricycles is, even though you have three-point landing gear, it's still possible to tip over if you go into a turn too sharp and too fast. I make it a practice of trying to lean my body towards the inside of the curve, kind of offset some of the centripetal force that's trying to push you over. Hey, what's up, dog? Passing on your left. Passing on your left. Off to the right here, which you really cannot see, is the practice facility for the Pittsburgh Steelers football team. And if I did show it to you, it's all covered with hedgerows, so you wouldn't see it anyway. Well, the big smokestacks you see up ahead have to do with one of the old steel mills that used to be along this river. We'll stop there and take a look when we get there. Passing on the left. I don't know why I say passing on the left all the time. Half these people have earbuds in and can't hear me anyhow. Sorry. All right, you're good. Goats. Whoa, just past something we need to see. A little while ago I told you about the hot metal bridge where they would carry molten pig iron across the river to the steel plant where they would clean up the iron and make it into steel. I mentioned they carry the molten iron in a big railroad car with a giant crucible or bucket, whatever you want to call it, on the back. Well, this is one of those cars. This is what they look like. Right now I'm in the community of Homestead. I'm about 9 miles into the trip. I'll be stopping a few other places up here. Homestead was the site of a big labor riot back in the 1890s, and we'll talk more about that when we get there. In here, we have some goats. Apparently they're kept pinned up along the trail here. Not sure what the story is behind them, but they all have chains around their necks or are domesticated to some degree. Let's see what this says. This Allegheny goatscape made possible by the Waterfront Association and the Homestead Bureau. Okay. Bye, goats. Could not have asked for nicer weather. Bright, sunshiny, not too hot, not too cold. I hope this continues for the rest of the week. Passing on the left. Thank you. Suddenly all the mile markers seem to have disappeared. I don't know where they went. Ah, here comes one. 140, that means we're 10 miles into the trip. Mile markers here, by the way, count down. So mile marker 0 is down in Cumberland. We are now in Homestead, about 10 miles into the trip. This is the site of the former Homestead Steelworks, which was owned by the Carnegie Steel Company, and for a while, it was the largest steel mill in the world. A series of industrial disputes over wages, working hours, and contracts occurred in the early years of the mill, culminating in a big riot that became known as the Battle of Homestead. The battle began on July 1st, 1892, and on July 6th, striking steel workers of the Amalgamated Association of Iron and Steel Workers Union clashed with Pinkerton agents hired by Carnegie. The Pennsylvania State Militia even got called into the fight. Steel workers won the battle, but ultimately they lost the war. was one of the most violent labor disputes in U.S. history. The final result was a major defeat for the Union and a major setback for other efforts to unionize steelworkers. This is called the Whitaker Flyover. There's two flyovers like this that were put up at the same time several years ago to cross over the railroad tracks to keep the trail going. And no, it was not named after this guy. Oh, this ought to be good. Caution, next 1 mile, active rock slide area. Be alert, look innocent, please no earbuds. Not a problem there. Well, I guess this is one of those active rock slides they were talking about. This is the Port Ferry flyover, similar to the Whitaker flyover we had a little while ago. And no, it was not named for her. Sometimes gravity can be your best friend.
often does a train go by?
So often you won't even notice it.
Road crossing up here. Even I have a traffic light. Well, I don't want to get a ticket, so I'll stop here for a minute and take a breather. This incline wasn't too steep. Look down, Tim. Look down. We have us a barge carrying something. I have no idea what. It says Chem 275 on the front. Don't know what that means. And we got another towboat and another barge there in the background going on. Now we are crossing the Riverton Bridge, again over the Monongahela River, this time from the west side to the east side. Now you may have caught when I was crossing the Hot Middle Bridge a while ago, I said I was crossing from the north side to the south side. Monongahela, which is locally simply called the Mon, begins in the city of Fairmont, West Virginia, where the Tigard Valley River and the West Fork River converge. It flows north for about 130 miles to Pittsburgh, where, as mentioned earlier, it joins up with the Allegheny River to become the Ohio River. It's one of the few major rivers in North America that flows in a south to north direction. Mon flows north for most of its journey, but then curves to the west just before reaching Pittsburgh. So I was correct when saying I crossed it from north to south, but now crossing from west to east. The word Monongahela, by the way, comes from an old Lenni Lenape Native American phrase that means river with the sliding banks. Ripples ahead!
Go! 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 Go!
Here on the left we have an old railroad roundhouse. Not sure which railroad it belonged to. Oh, there's a little marker up here, maybe it'll say. So this was a roundhouse associated with the National Tube Works, which was a steel pipe manufacturing company once owned by Flagler brothers. Henry Flagler was a partner of John D. Rockefeller back in the early days. It still doesn't say who owned the roundhouse or what railroad owned it, but apparently it had something to do with the pipe works. All right, we'll soldier on. Now comes the fun part, trying to navigate my way through McKeesport. Once I get through McKeesport, we'll be on the trail itself. 133 mile marker. Now we are on the trail itself. The trail runs on a right-of-way once owned by the Western Maryland Railroad, and before that by the Lake Erie and Pennsylvania Railroad. In 1973, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad, and the Western Maryland Railroad all merged under a holding company called the Chessie System. The word Chessie was derived from a popular nickname for the Chesapeake and Ohio system since the 1930s. A C&O advertising campaign once featured the image of a sleeping kitten. This was adopted into the corporate logo for Chessie System, a big letter C with a silhouette of a sleeping kitty cat. The three competing railroads all had their own tracks, many of which started at the same place and ended at the same place. Chessie then shut down some of these redundant lines in the name of economic efficiency, and this old Western Maryland line was one that was closed. In November of 1980, Chessie System merged with Seacoast Line Industries to form CSX Transportation, which continues to operate to this day. Okay, we're coming into the little community of Boston. The other day in one of my Facebook posts, I talked about riding the Gap, and a lady from the visitor center right here said, "Stop in and say hi." So I stopped in to say hi. Continuing on. Boy, things certainly have changed since the city. More bugs around here than the Watergate building. Fortunately, I brought a couple of COVID masks with me I can put over my face, at least to help a little bit so I don't ingest any unwanted protein. I'll have to break one of them out a bit. Here's another landmark on the trail, the Dravo Cemetery. This was originally a family cemetery built by one Nathan Newland back in 1812. In 1824, a Methodist preacher by the name of Dravo acquired the property and built a church here. The church burned down, and so he built a new church, and it burned down too. The property was eventually abandoned. The Elizabeth Township Historical Society took over maintenance of the cemetery in 1986. There are 708 known graves here, some dating back to 1812. Out of those 708 graves, only 81 have been identified. There are 10 war veterans here, 9 from the Civil War and 1 from the War of 1812. Okay, this is the grave of the soldiers who are buried here. Let's take a look and see if we can read some names. We got, looks like a Daniel Hoball, a Thomas Price, William Bankard, Zeke Painter, David Keintz, Abraham Penman, James Campbell, John French, and Charles Leitner. Of course, it doesn't say which one of the men. Oh, wait, 1812, Stephen Speakman. okay? And the other ones are all from the Civil War. This being Pennsylvania, they were probably Union soldiers. And here's a little stone obelisk monument for William B. Dravo and Deborah Blackburn, his wife. I'm not sure if he was the preacher man or not, or a descendant of the preacher man. Two other stones over here that are weathered. I can't make them out. No. Can't tell. Can't tell. Here's another Dravo. Died in 1899. He's got a flag. He may be a soldier of some kind. And here we have a Sadie Newland, who are the people who originally owned the property. She married a Dravo, obviously. Died in 1917, which for all the stones in here, that seems pretty recent. And we will continue on our journey. This is one of two waterfalls along the trail. This is called the White Waterfall. It's called the White Waterfall because apparently there are aluminum deposits in the water coming off the mountain, and they stain the rocks to make them look white. And that's why it's called the White Waterfall. Ever since we left McKeesport, we have been more or less parallel to the Youghiogheny River. Now the word looks like it should be Yo-Yo-Geny, but it's pronounced Youghiogheny, or simply the Yacht for short. The Youghiogheny is another Lenni Lenape word that means a stream flowing in a contrary direction. Okay, I'm not sure what direction it's supposed to flow in, but apparently the Lenapes felt it was flowing the wrong way. It begins, the very eastern end of the river begins way down in Preston County, West Virginia, and it zigzags in and out of Maryland a couple of times, eventually flowing into Pennsylvania, and continues on to McKeesport, where it joins the aforementioned Monongahela. The river is dammed up just upstream of Confluence, PA, to form the Youghiogheny Reservoir that stretches all the way back into Maryland. The dam was built as a flood control project by the Army Corps of Engineers in 1944. So we'll be following Youghiogheny quite a while yet. This is the second major waterfall you'll find along the Gap Trail. This one is called the Red Waterfall, although it's really more orange than red. I don't know. This water flows out of a coal mine somewhere up in the mountain. Now the kind of coal they mine in the Appalachians here in this part of the country, soft coal or bituminous coal, has a lot of sulfur embedded in it. And so what happens is the water flows out of the mines, mixes with the sulfur as it's flowing out, and then flows down on these rocks. Well, the rocks contain trace amounts of iron ore, and it basically causes the rocks to, well, rust when it mixes with the low-level sulfuric acid in the water. Probably don't want to drink this stuff. In fact, you can actually smell the sulfur in the air being given off by this water. Alright, finally pulling into West Newton. This is our stop for the night. As soon as I can find the bread and breakfast house I'm supposed to stay at.